this project, I'm planning on making the alphanumeric bulletin letters and the Papercut Cafe dies my central focal point of the whole project. And then kind of in supporting roles for them, I want to use the metal flourish as the background because I love all the detail. I don't really want it to stand out, but I want the texture. And so I'm going to color some watercolor paper, light colors, something like antique linen, spun sugar, maybe speckled egg, very light wash over the watercolor paper, and then emboss it with this and see if I can use this for a light background. So it doesn't really pull from this, but it does just add some interest and texture. Now, along with these, I want a few little additional things, and I'm not, you know how this goes. I'm not absolutely positive these are going to work, but in my mind, I am planning on maybe using some of these scalloped elements, or maybe this long one here from the Abstract Elements die set, because I want the teacups on their saucers to have something to sit on, like a tabletop or something like that. I'm wondering if these will maybe be the answer to what I'm looking for. I don't want anything really huge and heavy. And then I want to add possibly a few of the mini brushstroke flowers to each of the Papercut Cafe saucers, and the teacups. So just a couple of small ones. I don't want anything huge that's going to, take the focus away from the teacups, but I did want to add just a few floral elements, maybe some leaves, some things like that, maybe this tiny rose on a couple of them. So that's my plan for supporting these two as my main focal point on the project. And I know you've already seen the project. I haven't, because as you know, I do these before I start. So my plan is to take this vignette panel, and you can see this is an old one because it has the Christmas collage on it. So this is one that I had in my stash, and I pulled it out. I brewed some tea from as many different tea bags as I could find. I don't usually use tea bags at home very often. I use loose tea, but I had some tea around, and these are what I ended up with. So I have several from black tea sources, a couple that were green tea, and some herb tea. And I really like how they have different colors of brown and beige, and then some of these pops of purple and deep red from the herbal teas and the green tea. So I really like that they're all just a little bit different in color, even in size and shape and texture, including the fact that some of them are even this kind of a loose weave, maybe, I don't know, some kind of cheesecloth maybe, or something like that, that really gives it some interest. So this is how I'm planning the project to kind of go somehow. I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to leave these tags, but I do want in the center for it to say tea with the bulletin, alphanumeric bulletin letters. And what I really like about these letters is not only that they're big and bold for like a bulletin board, but also that the outside comes off. And so also the inside would be part of that outline. And I can cut that from a different color. And I'm thinking that since this is tea related, and a lot of things with tea have just a little bit of gold on the saucers and different things like that, that I may cut that outline out in gold. And then I haven't decided if I'm going to make the actual letters a solid color or if I want them to be a floral. So I'm going to make my decision for that. And then as you can see, the Papercut Cafe has 5 different cups, 2 different saucers. So these are the same saucer, and this square one is the same saucer. I have cut out quite a few saucers, and they are all in this part of my muffin tin. And then I have all 5 of the Papercut Cafe cut out. They're all each in their own muffin tin. And then I'm going to color them. I'm going to assemble them, and they are going to go each one on one of the little, there we go. So you can see how that will work. And I cut out 2 of each, so I'm going to end up with 2 extra teacups, and that's fine. So I'll have a teacup on each one of the bags, and they'll be in a different color. They will have a saucer under them. And then what I thought would be fun, so this is where, let me find another saucer. So this is where the, there we go. And again, you know how this goes. I may not use this, but this is where I thought the scallop might come in and be fun to put a scallop underneath. I may need to cut this in half and just run it all the way across, or I may not use it at all. It may just seem like it's just too much. But I thought it might be fun just to add that little bit of an abstract element underneath each one, since they are kind of abstract in and of themselves. They're a little bit modern feeling, and so I thought it might be fun to add a little bit of a modern touch. And then we'll see how it goes with the florals also, but just putting a little flower here and there on each one might be a fun touch, or maybe just on 1 or 2. I may not even put them on each one, but that's my plan. This is where I'm going to go. So let's go ahead and get started. I am going to begin by covering my vignette box with the embossed middle flourish papers. And while that is drying, then I can color my teacups and saucers and get those all assembled and ready to start putting this together. So let's get started making. To make the tea bags for this card, I just steeped some tea, and I tried to find some different tea bags with different tags on them because I want to keep the tags. And in doing so, I found that some of the tea bags were different styles. And so I may be mixing in different styles. And then I decided, just in case I didn't want to mix in different styles, I would go ahead and steep several of the same style, and then I could switch out the tag, and so I may be doing that as well. So I just kind of wanted to be sure that I was ready. I also thought it was interesting that depending on the tea, which in English breakfast is much stronger than some of these others that may have some Darjeeling and some in it, that they are a little darker red with the different types of teas. So I thought that was interesting in the way that they came out and the colors that the tea bags came out as well. So I steeped the tea bags, and now they've kind of dried overnight on some parchment. And then I'm going to take my scissors and on the back side of them. So these are a little easier because they're just like a little pouch. These have been folded in half and they're kind of longer. And so I'm going to cut the back and dump the tea out, and then you won't see the back part of it. And so I'm going to do the same on these. I'll just cut the back, dump the tea out, and then I'll just have the bag left. And if I need to, I'll go ahead and iron over them a little bit, but I kind of think I want the crinkly look, so I may just leave them as is. So as you can see here, I had the tea dumped out of this Earl Grey packet, and all I did was cut across the back of it right here. And then I just worked all of the tea out and flattened it out. And I think that that's going to be good. If there's any little bits of tea left in it, you can see some up here. I think that just adds to the character, so I'm not worried about that. So I'm going to do that to the rest of these. Cut a slit on the back, dump the tea out, and then you can actually dump the tea into your flower planters and things like that in the front yard to add a little bit of acidity to the soil. Especially around like roses and some things like that. I'm going to begin embossing the papers that I just stained. So I'm going to use my Big Shot fold away so that I can do it on here, and just remind you of a couple of things in case you haven't used a 3D embossing folder yet. So this is the Sizzix Big Shot fold away, and it's called that because you can pull the bottom out on both sides and fold it, and it is a nice thin little way to store a Big Shot. Works just the same as the Big Shot though. And then you open it up when you're ready to use it. And then you need to make sure that these get pushed in so that you have a nice flat platform for it. And so they're locked in place. And then I'm going to go ahead and get started. So when you're using the 3D platform, 3D embossing folders, you need just the adapter platform. You do not need the Thinlit adapter, so just the platform. And if you look on here, it tells you which ones and what sandwich you need. So it says for the 3D impressions, you need the texture fade, you need the adapter platform, and you need one cutting mat. Okay, so that's how this is going to work. I'm going to take my blue paper. I'll set the pink one aside, and I'm just going to give it a quick spritz with water on both sides, just a little mist. And then you want to pick the side of the texture fade that you want to use. And because I want the flourish to be standing out and be embossed that way, I don't want it debossed. I want it embossed. So I'm going to put my blue facing up so that it will be embossed that way. And I think I want it all the way back here because I want to see that flower. I'm going to close it. And then I'm going to put it on an angle. Now, there's something that might happen, and so I want to kind of warn you about this. Sometimes it gets stuck when it's going through this way. Now, if you'll notice, I have the fold, and so it's kind of thick on that side. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on here, and let's see if it goes through. So I'm holding it, and so see how it's pushing it and it's not letting it go through? That's because it's really thick on that side. So I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to turn it this way. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and put it again on the angle, and then I'm going to try it that way and make sure that it's, even though it's on an angle, you need it to stay inside of the edges. And there we go. All right, so sometimes, especially with new folders, and since this is the first time that I'm using it, with new folders, it will do that. Now because I went all the way through, I'm not able to reverse it like I normally would. So I'm gonna bring it back around this way, and I'm just gonna keep putting it through like this. Whereas normally with the switch or the Vagabond, I would just hit reverse and let it go back through. So if I don't put it all the way through, then I can reverse it. All right. And I did it 3 times for 3D. And look how pretty that is. Okay. So where we're at, I have all of the embossed pieces cut into 3x3 squares. And that's because this is a 9x9 panel. So I'm going to have 3 across and 3 up and down. And that will cover the whole thing. Then on the sides, I want, so if I have a blue one, let's say here, maybe I want a pink one here and a cream one up here, something like that. So for the sides, I have 1x3s that I cut from the leftover pieces. I have plenty of both to cover the top and to cover the sides. So I was going to get started adhering them with Distress Collage Medium Matte, and then I decided I think I want a little bit more texture. I know this is very textured, so I really don't need to do anything else, but I wanted to have some sewing on it just because. So I could go around each one individually and then adhere them. That would be kind of tedious with some of these. So here's my solution. I cut a piece of paper 9x9. And then I cut 4 9x1 strips. And this is just some thin scrapbook paper that I have on hand. So I'm going to put these on, and I'm gonna, alternate so that they're different. So I'll adhere these all on here. They'll be touching, and I need to adhere them to the paper with an adhesive that is not going to remain sticky. So I have a, what is this? Magic Blue Yoo-hoo, I don't know, stick. that I got for a class that I took a few months ago, and so it's still good. And I know it's blue, but it turns clear. So I'm going to adhere these with this, and it doesn't need to be really, really stuck down, but it will turn clear. So don't worry about that, but it will hold everything in place. See, so it'll hold it on there just long enough so I can sew it. Now, you may also notice that I have already gone around all of the edges with the antique linen and my blending tool. So I did that already on all of the squares. I did it already on all the ones on the side. So once I get all of these adhered to this, then I'm going to go through and I'm going to try and figure out, so this one, then I would probably do pink over here. All right, because that's the way it goes. And then this one would be cream. So I'm going to figure out, you know, which one goes on which side. And then I'll go ahead and adhere these the way that they should be. So this one's going to all be, and then yeah, like that. So that will be this side. And so I'm going to attach those on there, and then I can zigzag across in the center if I would like to do that. And I can also sew around the edges, and it'll go a little bit faster than if I did them individually. Although I won't have all of the threads and things, it'll be fine. I have plenty of threads on the tags. So I just think that'll add a little bit of detail that I really want. I have my sewing machine set up. I have white thread in it. I have white thread in the bobbin. I have white thread in the machine going through the needle. And this is just an inexpensive brother sewing machine that I got from Walmart. It was under $100 at the time, and it should still be well under $100 right now if you were to get one. I only use it for my paper crafting. I do not use this for sewing my fabrics or anything like that. And I use just a heavy duty needle on these for the most part when I'm sewing, because I'm usually sewing through several layers of paper, and sometimes they're very thick paper, so I use, you know, like a denim needle or something like that. Most of the time, though, usually if it's just paper, I can get away with just a regular needle. So I don't know any numbers or anything like that, because I'm not a seamstress. That's just I just look on the thing. If it says heavy duty, I grab those. Okay. So let's talk about sewing. This machine, it has very basic stitching. So it has zigzag and it has straight stitching, and it has several different options for the zigzag as far as the width and how far apart the stitches are. And the same thing for the straight stitches. If you want longer, farther apart stitches, or close together, smaller stitches for straight stitching. There are a couple of different settings. And so that gives you just a couple of options just for looks. I always practice on a practice sheet so that I can see if everything's okay, because sometimes you have to switch this tension just a little bit if you look on the back. So let's go ahead, and I have it set on one of my zigzags. So I'm just going to start zigzagging across here and put that up. And I think I like the way that looks, but let's look on the back. All right, so this is just where some of that stitching got kind of balled up a little bit, but it looks like my bobbin is still running okay. It's not caught on anything. So I think I'm all right with that. I don't really care about the rest of it, and it looks very straight on the back side. So I think I'm pretty happy with that. It allows me to see all of the beautiful 3D texture fade, but it also adds just that little bit of detail that I would want. And so I'm going to go ahead and run this way just so I can see what that would look like. Going to have to, and if this ever happens and to you, where you get it. It does get stuck on something for whatever reason. I just usually work it back and forth until it loosens. And I'm not sure why it is balling up after a little while. But I'm going to take it out and I'll probably redo the bobbin so that it won't do that. But for the most part, when I'm sewing on my projects, I really don't care if it does that, because it just adds to the character to me. If that bothers you, you can go ahead and pull it out and then try and, you know, run your finger over it to get rid of some of those holes. But if it were me, I would just leave it, because I think it adds interest. So I'm going to go ahead and rethread this bobbin and see if I can get it to quit sticking like that. But if I look up here, I really like the way that adds just a little finished touch to it, but also allows me to see the detail. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and do that for a little bit of finished stitching. All right. Okay, I've rethreaded the bobbin, and let's go ahead and get it started again. So I'm going to start back here where I Okay, that part looks good to me. I'm going to run over this just to make sure that we're good to go. And then I will start on the whole piece. Yep, still really love that. Okay, that's the way that we're going to go. So I will speed this up. And if you'd like, you can watch me sew. And if it's too long, I'll cut it out, and you've seen what you need to see. So I hope that helps. If you are a little worried about stitching, you know what? Let me switch it to a straight stitch real quick for those of you who might want some stitching. So I've stitched it to a straight stitch. Be sure that if you are switching between, because sometimes I like to sew a little bit and then do zigzag and sew a little bit more. If you're doing that, be sure that the needle is up when you are switching. Just like when you're sewing, you don't want the needle in the fabric or in the paper when you change the stitch. So there we go, just sewing straight on a project. Okay, so there's a straight stitch, and if you turn it over, the back's pretty straight too, so you don't need to move the tension. If it weren't very straight, I would move the tension and then keep testing until I was happy with the evenness on the front and on the back of my piece. But that's really all there is to it. If you want, you can put it on there and then stitch for a little while and then hit the reverse and just do some messy stitching like that. And then you continue on. Okay, and that's a little bit of messy stitching there. And the other thing that I was talking about is sewing, and then let me trim a lot of these so that you can actually see. So one of the things that's fun to do is to sew a straight line, especially on my Halloween cards. I like to do that. So I'll be sewing, and then I will switch partway through and do some crazy zigzagging. So if I were going to do that, let's say on this side, I would start with my straight stitch, and I would sew a little bit, and then I would make sure my needle's out. I would switch to zigzag, and you might zigzag, and then make sure that your needle's out. Switch it back to straight, and back to zigzag. And then if you wanted to do some messy zigzag, you do the same thing where you back and forth. Okay, and then there's your messy zigzagging. And that's what it looks like if you go straight and then some zigzag and then straight again. So sometimes it's kind of fun to mix them up a little bit and get kind of messy, especially, like I said, for something that's either rustic or for Halloween time. So there's a little quick mini tutorial on some sewing. So I'm going to get started, and I'm going to sew in between all of the squares that are going to be on my background paper. So I'm going to just sew in between all of them. And then I'll decide if I want to do a straight stitch around the edge or just leave it. And then I'm going to also sew in between all of these for the sides, and decide if I want to just do a straight stitch around the edge, just maybe so it will look a little bit finished. That will probably be what I'll end up doing, but let me get started on that. And you know what, at this point you don't need to watch me, so I will just do that off camera, and we'll come back and it'll be all sewn. Once I put it on the panel, I decided that I'm not going to sew around the edge because I'm going to need to sand it anyway. So I'm just going to sand all the edges once I get them on in place. And then I'm going to go ahead and ink them again, maybe with a darker brown ink, I'm not sure. But I just want to go ahead and make it seem like the paper is just kind of worn off along the edges rather than finished with straight sewing. And then I just put these on here to see what it looked like. And I think that that's going to be good. I kind of didn't realize I was making a grid. I mean, I should have realized it, but I didn't realize it until I got it on here. And then I was like, oh, I'm putting one T thing into each square, but I still think it'll be cool, even though it's very structured. It's more structured than I had envisioned in my mind. But I think I still really like it, and I love the texture that the sewing gave, so I'm glad I added that. All right, I'm going to get this put on here and then start figuring out what I want to do to attach the tea bags and the teacups, if I want to put anything behind them, or what I'm going for there. And I know that some of them still have little bits of tea left in them. I think that's really cool, so I'm leaving it. And that may really bother some people, but I actually kind of really like it, so I'm leaving that. All right, let's get going. All right, the background's done, the sides are done. I sanded the edges, corners, re-inked. I have my tea bags laid out. I was trying to decide what I wanted to use to attach them, and so I got out my practice sewing piece again and attached two of them to see if I would be able to tell what I attached them with, and I really can't, and they seem to be stuck to the paper nicely. So I think that what's going to work is the double-sided sequin tape, and I have the 1/8 inch here because it was available. So what I did on the practice was to just put it on the outside edges, but not completely to the edge. I will remove this extra little protective piece, and then I'll go ahead and stick it down. And then I think I'll use maybe a glue dot or something like that to attach the tags in the different spots where I want them. And I may not actually attach the tags until I get the teacups on, because I want to make sure that I have enough room for the teacup. All right, so that's where I'm going to go with this. So let me get these attached, and then we'll get to work on the letters and adding the teacups. I'm going to put together one of the teacups. They all have the same layers. So and this goes for the oval saucer as well. There's a larger saucer, then a smaller saucer. And if you look closely, you can see there is a line right here. So that helps you. You just line this up at the top, and then that leaves that little bit at the bottom there. And you also have a line here, and then that's where and this can be any color. I decided to make it gold, so that's where that's going to go, on the lip of the saucer. Same thing with the, oops, you can't see it, but same thing with the oval saucers. You have two, you have the lines, so you just follow those. The teacup, and I've just colored this with Victorian Velvet Distress ink. So you're going to put this one with the opening on there, And then you're going to put the lip with a little bit of highlights on there. And you just follow the lines where it should go. So you can see there are lines right there. You're just going to follow those and line it up. And then what I'm going to do, because I want the lip to be gold, and I also have I have to find that. I have the tea color that goes inside there, the little oval. But I cut a second one of the top layer, and I'm just going to go along here and I'm going to cut it. Like that. And I'm going to lay that there so that there's just a little bit of gold on the lip of the teacup, and then that will tie in with the saucer, and then that will tie in with the letters that I've cut. I haven't attached these yet or even attached the paper, so I cut them out of the gold Kraft stock, and then I cut these out of worn wallpaper. And so that's how the title's going to go. I'm going to attach the worn wallpaper to the gold. But so these will have a gold edge to them. And then I'm going to have the gold, just a little bit of gold on each of these that I put on, just to kind of pull the gold in. And I think that'll work. And I'm still trying to decide if I want to cut an extra handle and have that be gold too. And I might just do that on a couple of them and not all of them, just to, you know, kind of make it a little bit, I don't know, different. Or maybe some of them that I cut the gold handle, I might not cut the lip. But anyway, that's how you do it. And I would do it the same way. I would just cut out probably just this part of this base piece and then trim it off and just stick it over what I have here. All right, so that's how you attach those. Just follow the layers and you're good to go. All the teacups are colored, and I have some of the Simon Says stamp foam dots on the back. So some of them are thinner and some of them are thicker. And so I put the thicker ones behind the cups and the thinner ones behind the saucers. But I haven't peeled anything off yet. So I just kind of have it laid out. I don't have the T letters stuck down yet either. I am going to see what I think about the abstract elements, if I color them and put them under. This is the only of the smaller scallops that fit under anything. So I'm going to see what I think. And then I also, while I was at it, cut out some of the little leaves and flowers. So I'm going to see what I think of those once I get them all layered and ready to put on there. So I'm going to play around with it a little bit and see how much I want to do, and if I even want to do any of that, or if I just want to leave it clean and simple. Well, makers, here is the finished product, and I decided to go ahead and use a couple of the abstract elements. So I used the larger of the scalloped pieces. There are a few smaller ones that were too thin, and then I used this long one, cut it in half, and layered it on a few of the squares. And then the others, I went ahead and used just the single one that is kind of represented by this purple one here. So I thought that just kind of gave them a little bit of kind of an anchor for them to sit on. And then I went through and I picked a few of the different flowers. So I picked this set picked this little stem, all of the tiny leaves, this set of small flowers. I picked this set of small flowers and the rosebud. And then I went ahead and picked this spray of green leaves as well. So these leaves, this little leaf, this already has a leaf on it, and then this spray of leaves here. And so I used the spray of leaves on a couple of the squares. This is one of the single leaves. And then this little one here is this little leaf. These flowers I painted wilted violet, I think, shaded lilac. And I cut them apart so that I could put 3 in the top, 1 in the bottom here. And then this is this single flower that's in the yellow. And then these 3 are together. But those 3 I colored yellow, and then I also cut them apart so that I could put 1 down here and 2 up there. This pink one and this pink one are the 2 purple ones up here, and I did cut those apart. And I again used just some of the leaves from the 2 little individual leaves that are here. Here's the little rosebud that I put up here, and it's right here. And then, here's the little stem. I tried to make it look like maybe rosemary, since rosemary is kind of that purple color. The center wording is Bulletin. And as I said earlier, I cut it out with gold and the gold craft stock, metallic craft stock. And this is worn wallpaper. I went ahead and decided that I wanted to use the gold craft stock on the handles, the lip, and the lip of the saucers on all of the cups. I was going to just do it on a couple. I decided to do it on all of the cups because I thought it was a fun addition. I did pop the cups up with some foam squares from Simon Says Stamp, and in 2 thicknesses, because this is a little higher because it's sitting on 2 layers of cardstock. So I used the thinner ones under the saucers and then the thicker ones under the actual cups to hold them up. This also has one of the, I cut it just a little piece of one of the foam squares on there. All right. In order to get these to stay in place, I put collage medium and I just went all down the strings, and then I used my finger to make sure that they were kind of soaked, put it on the back of each of the tags, and then I just kind of wound them so that they just looked like they were kind of had fallen that way. And then once they were there, I just pressed them down so that they would attach, maybe not everywhere, but there would be a few places where it would come in contact, and it would, so they would stay put. And then I did put it on the back of each of the tags so that the tags would not be going anywhere. And let's see, anything else that I need to tell you about this? Well, I can tell you the colors that I used. So this is, let's see, this one's a Victorian Velvet. And I used the same color for every layer. I just used a more concentrated color on the base and then lighter as I went up. And so this one was a little lighter, and then the top layer would be the lightest. This one is Shaded Lilac. This is Dried Marigold. This one is, I believe that one is Salty Ocean. I'm sorry, Salty Ocean. Shabby Shutters. This one is Salvage Patina, Abandoned Coral, Squeezed Lemonade. And like I said, this is Shaded Lilac. This is Shaded Lilac. I wanted to try and kind of pull it in a little bit. And Shaded Lilac. And then Abandoned Coral. Oh no, this is Saltwater Taffy. I'm sorry. This one is Spun Sugar. And this one is Scattered Straw, I believe. The centers on most of them are those two were wild honey. They didn't turn out very dark, and then I just used ground espresso for the brown centers. So I think that's it for my colors. And I already went over the colors of the background. That was done with the metallic flourish. So I think that I've covered everything. If you have any questions, you know what you need to do. Just go ahead and contact me through my blog. There is a section in the right-hand column that will allow you to email me, and I will be glad to get back to you with any answers to your questions or clarifications if you need them. Thank you so very much for following along on this really fun tea vintage vignette panel. I had a great time making it, and I hope you enjoyed following along just as much as I had sharing it with you. So thanks again, makers, and I hope that you have a very creative day.